I've always thought that my job should be called selector rather than director. I've always thought that director is a kind of a misnomer, because what you're doing is a process of selection endlessly, you know, with actors, with locations, with lighting. It's a process of kind of honing it down and making, hopefully, the right decision.
The reason we shot in Pittsburgh is we wanted a real blue-collar town, and since Pittsburgh was a steel town, we felt it was a perfect place.
Pittsburgh was a dream come true for Andrew Carnegie, and it was part of the birth of the Industrial Revolution of this country. And we're using that as a background for a story about having a dream come true. And here you've got a girl working in an industry that is not what it used to be, and she wants to break out of it. And there she is with her welding machine and her mask, trying to break out of steel, a world of steel.
You know, I went there, I guess, at an interesting time, you know, when there was still acres of old factories that were kind of disused, rusting, sort of paint peeling, and I love decaying stuff. I mean, I just love shooting in areas like that, you know, like when he takes it to this kind of shunting yard, you know, where there's railway lines and stuff like that, rather than a park, you know, rather than a movie theater. And I think that's fun to do that, you know, because suddenly it becomes fresher.
Hey, watch it now, guys.
It's funny, you were talking about visuals. We were working in a kind of a tunnel where she was welding. I said I want the walls to be wet looking. I wanted them to have a kind of a sheen. So all along this tunnel, they put up a kind of a pipe so they could turn it on and off and make it look wet. But then when I saw the pipe working, I realized that they shouldn't turn the water off, that it looked great with the water permanently dripping, kind of streaming. But it's nice when you accidentally see something that works that you hadn't expected to work. We spent 2 weeks in Pittsburgh, I think, for the exteriors, and for the actual construction site. That was all shot in Pittsburgh, but the rest was shot here in LA.
Hi, Grant.
The Loft was shot downtown LA. Then it was a much funkier place. There was still lots of disused warehouses and stuff like that. And we built Morby's, the bar, in a kind of a factory space, as I remember. And so it was fun to have this big space for me to film in, because there were all sorts of lighting options where you could get a totally different texture, a totally different lighting feeling.
You know, there was smoke everywhere. There was always more smoke. Oh, there's more smoke. We need more smoke. Because he wanted this smoky atmosphere throughout the film.
I'd always worked with smoke for a long while prior to that, which means, but you have it in the atmosphere and it changes the color, you know, it makes things look more pastel-y, less contrasty. And when you're using smoke, obviously, there would be 2 or 3 takes that would be too smoky, where you couldn't see anybody.
When Adrian first shot the Loft sequence with her coming home for the very first time, it was just full of smoke. I mean, he's a big smoke guy, commercials, you know. It looked like the place was on fire. It just was like so smoky.
And so there was a lot of panic at the studio about me using smoke. So an edict came out, no more smoke. But I couldn't just stop, you know, because I'd done half of the movie with smoke and you can't just change the look of it. So after that, somebody was always on the door to tell me when to hide the smoke can, you know.
I certainly knew that Michael Kaplan, the fantastic costume designer, was creating a new fashion, because every place I went, whether it was in Texas or at Disneyland or in Venice, I saw torn t-shirts and torn sweatshirts and leg warmers galore. And it's when I first learned the power of this medium.
I was very excited by the look that we were putting together for Jennifer. Not just the cut-off sweatshirt, but just everything. The big heavy man's top coat that she was wearing, the fact that she was wearing maybe 3 scarves, 3 mufflers at the same time. She'd wear leggings or leotards with a big sweatshirt or t-shirt. Dancers wore leg warmers. I mean, that's what dancers wore. I think the way Jennifer wore them in the film was just such a sexy look. You know, covering up the bottom of the leg and exposing the top of the leg. And I think just doing things in a slightly different way than people were used to seeing them made a different kind of statement.
I had never seen a woman take her bra off without removing her blouse or her shirt. And I think I heard that that was something that Jenny did in her meeting with Adrian. And It's great, we're going to put it in the movie.
I just saw her do it and I said, shit, I've got to use that, that's amazing. And what was nice is it becomes another layer in the scene. So the fact she was taking her bra off while she was talking, it just made it memorable, I think.
If you close your eyes, you can see the music.
Adrian, against the studio's wishes, kept putting her in these big, bulky clothes. She was wearing pea coats and army things because he wanted it to be real. He didn't want the girl to walk around in real sexy clothing because that's not who she was. She was a blue-collar kid. The sexiness came out of when she performed.
Prior to that, you know, when I was doing commercials, I always liked women wearing kind of oversized stuff, T-shirts, things like that. Actually, I guess girls in men's clothing always looks good, you know what I'm saying, hanging off them. And so that sort of look I had done before, but I wasn't prepared for the effect that it had on people.
People ask me how this sweatshirt that became so famous arose. It wasn't anything I invented. I think the fact that she wears that costume on the poster and the movie became such a big hit, that look became validated, and many girls who identified with it wanted to look that way, so they started wearing it. But a few years before, when I was in art school in Philadelphia, I used to go to the Pennsylvania Ballet Company and sit and watch their rehearsals and do sketches. And even back then, I noticed that the dancers would wear sweat clothes to keep their muscles warm, but for maneuverability, they would cut them in various ways. They'd cut the sleeves off, they'd cut the neckbands off. And so the fact that Jennifer was a construction worker, sweat clothes seemed appropriate for her character. The fact that she was a dancer, cut-up clothes also seemed appropriate.
I remember I was in New York, the movie had already come out, and somebody said, you know, everybody is wearing those T-shirts hanging off their shoulder like that, you know, those kind of frayed edge things. And I hadn't noticed, you know, and I went out into the street and I walked up and down 7th Avenue or something like that. And I would say every third girl was wearing that stuff. And that was a fabulous feeling. It's lovely when you realize that your movie has had that sort of effect, you know, it has really got through to people.
It turns you on.
Well, I don't know if you remember the dinner scene with her boss and eating the lobster and sucking on the lobster with the oil dripping down her chin, and then she puts her foot in the guy's crotch, and you know, that's all Adrian's fantasy.
She was actually wearing a whole tuxedo in that scene, and Adrian said that he wanted to find a way for her to punctuate the scene after they have the run-in with his ex-wife.
Nikki's told me all about you. Hi. You're not really a welder, are you?
So rather than have her just wearing a tuxedo, which I thought would be really cool and different, I thought, what if there was like another step to it? And it would give Adrian what he was looking for, a way of her having the last statement in the scene.
I fucked his brains out.
So Adrian brought to the table very specific style. He's a stylist. I think that is in large part what the success of the movie is owed to.